Greetings, I am Tan Yukin. Today, I will present the content of Chapter 2, Understanding Geriatric Capacity Evaluation and Preparing for Assessment Procedures. This chapter is organized into 4 primary sections. 1. Foundational Principles of Geriatric Capacity Evaluation. 2. Standardized Operational Workflow. 3. Critical Implementation Considerations. 4. Environmental and Material Preparation Requirements. We will systematically examine each component, concluding with analytical questions to reinforce knowledge integration. First, we shall explore the fundamental principles of geriatric capacity evaluation. Protocol compliance. All assessments shall strictly adhere to national and local regulatory frameworks, policies, and standardized protocols. Equity and impartiality. Evaluators must maintain consistent standards regardless of subject's age or social status, safeguarding participants' rights throughout the process. Objective verifiability. Data collection must utilize validated methodologies from authoritative sources to ensure reliability. Information confidentiality. Strict protection of personal privacy is mandatory with no disclosure without explicit participant consent. Dynamic assessment protocol. Initial evaluation must precede service initiation in institutional care settings. Following the initial assessment, a reassessment shall be conducted at minimum 12-month intervals, barring exceptional circumstances. Immediate evaluation triggered by significant functional status changes. Formal review mechanisms available for contested results through applicant or legal representative request. Next, we proceed to examine the fundamental workflow of the ability assessment for older adults. The standard workflow for the ability assessment of older adults comprises 5 sequential stages: application acceptance, evaluation, public notification, and result communication review, and final determination. Application. The applicant submits a formal request for ability assessment to designated local authorities, for example, Civil Affairs Bureau, sub-district offices, community affairs, service centers, and completes the required application materials. Specific application modalities are subject to local regulations. Using Beijing as an example, applicants may schedule an appointment via telephone or log into the dedicated assessment system to complete the Beijing Comprehensive Ability Assessment application form for older adults online, or submit a completed application form to their local sub-district township office. Acceptance. The responsible department reviews the application materials. For compliant applications, 2 assessors are randomly selected from the designated expert roster to conduct an in-home assessment. Alternatively, the assessed individual may visit the assessment facility in person. For non-compliant applications, the applicant is formally notified and materials are returned or revisions are requested prior to resubmission. Evaluation. The assigned assessors, adhering to the established assessment protocol and equipped with necessary tools, conduct the on-site evaluation within the scheduled timeframe and produce a formal assessment report. A minimum of 2 assessors must be present during the evaluation, at least one of whom must possess a professional healthcare background. The assessment must be immediately terminated if the older adult exhibits physical discomfort or psychological distress. Public notification and result communication. The assessment results are publicly posted on community bulletin boards within the assessed individual's primary residential area. Following the notification period, the results are formally communicated to the applicant via electronic or physical documentation and filed with the District Civil Affairs Bureau for record keeping. Review and final determination. If the applicant disputes the assessment results, a formal request for review must be submitted through the original application channel within the stipulated timeframe. The outcome of this review constitutes the final and binding determination. What then are the key considerations when conducting the ability assessment for older adults? Pre-assessment assessors must have undergone professional training and obtained relevant qualification certification. They shall proactively present their credentials and explain the purpose of the assessment. Communicate with the assessed individual, observing their tone and attitude to secure cooperation. Should the individual be uncooperative or exhibit poor attitude, this must be documented. Assessors shall prepare all necessary tools and supplies required for the evaluation. During assessment, continuously observe the assessment environment for safety. If unsafe factors are identified, evacuate promptly and report to the relevant departments. Observe the living environment of the individual. Direct inquiries may also be made to the individual family members or caregivers. If necessary, request relevant supporting documentation to aid the evaluation. At least one family member of the individual being assessed must be present during the process. Assessors are required to maintain a professional demeanor characterized by a respectful tone and clear enunciation, and must abstain from using provocative or insulting remarks to prevent conflicts. Assessors must not rush or lead the individual in their responses. Encourage the individual to complete assessment items autonomously and provide demonstrations where possible. If immediate demonstration is not feasible, the assessor shall make a professional judgment based on experience. Significant discrepancies between demonstrated performance and reported usual performance must be detailed in the special circumstances record. If risks such as falls, choking, wandering, or suicidal ideation are identified, implement preventive measures immediately. Discuss these with the individual and their family and document them in the special circumstances record. Assessment forms are not to be altered. If assessors disagree on findings, a reassessment is required. If information provided by the individual or family is found to be inaccurate, the assessor shall patiently explain relevant policies and clarify the potential consequences, noting this in the special circumstances record if necessary. If the individual or family disputes the assessment results, the assessor shall communicate with them, providing a detailed explanation in the special circumstances record if required. Post-assessment. If the assessment was conducted during an illness episode, this must be noted. A second assessment should be scheduled 1 month after recovery. Upon completion, both assessors must carefully review all assessment information and sign the documentation. The assessed individual and/or their family member shall also sign the relevant documents. Those unable to write may provide a fingerprint. A photograph shall be taken of each assessed individual and assigned a unique code. The photo code must correspond with the code on the paper-based materials. Finally, we proceed to the preparation of assessment environment and supplies. Preparation of assessment environment. Prior to conducting the ability assessment for older adults, assessors must contact the individual or their family to confirm the specific time and location. Assessors must ensure at least one family member is present during the assessment. Absence of family accompaniment must be documented in the special circumstances record. First, selection of assessment location. First, the assessment should be conducted in a familiar environment for the individual. If the actual location differs from the residential address provided in the application materials, assessors must verify this discrepancy in advance. Second, for assessments conducted outside the individual's home, for example in care institutions or hospitals, assessors must contact the responsible personnel beforehand to confirm whether the individual resides there long-term. Arrangement of assessment environment. First, the environment must be clean, quiet, and well lit, with adequate ventilation and appropriate temperature. Second, the assessment area should contain at least 3 chairs and 1 table. Third, for community-based group assessments, a waiting area shall be designated, with evaluations conducted sequentially in a relatively private room. Fourth, the assessment room must be properly equipped. Either inside or immediately outside, there must be a continuous flight of stairs and a passageway with handrails. The floor surface of the passageway must be even, and stair design must comply with relevant regulations outlined in the Architectural Design Standards for Elderly Care Facilities. Second, preparation of assessment tools and supplies. 1 common assessment tools and supplies. First, recording tools, paper pens, software, and portable electronic devices for digital assessments. Second, assessment forms, including basic information collection forms, blank, assessment, scales, and special circumstances record forms. Third, auxiliary tools, such as eating utensils, washcloths, razors, button-front shirts, commodes, wheelchairs, canes, mobile steps, hearing aids, magnifiers, newspapers, etc. Fourth, other items including masks, gloves, shoe covers, hand sanitizer, and assessors' identification badges. 2. Provision of testing equipment and supplies. Select appropriate, user-friendly testing equipment and supplies, such as visual acuity charts, thermometers, blood pressure monitors, glucometers, height and weight scales, pulse oximeters, and stethoscopes. For temperature measurement, mercury thermometers are generally recommended. However, infrared thermometers should be used for individuals with profuse axillary sweating, trauma, inflammation, shoulder joint injuries, or those too frail to hold a thermometer securely. 3. Installation and debugging of application software. First, software installation assessors shall select suitable devices, for example smartphones, laptops, tablets, according to installation requirements. Upon installation, verify that the software launches correctly. Second, software debugging. To ensure efficient operation, perform necessary debugging of the application software. This concludes the content of this chapter. Please complete the following review questions. First, the requirement to conduct an ability assessment for older adults prior to their admission to a care institution reflects which principle of assessment? Second, what is the minimum number of assessors required to be present during the on-site assessment? Third, the correct sequence for the ability assessment process is. That concludes the content of this chapter. Thank you for your attention.